Welcome back, everyone. So we're going to kick off for the afternoon. So next keynote speaker is Rob Redman, who's the Customer Success Best Practice Lead for EMEA at Adobe, one of the long-standing sponsors of CSN. So we're thrilled to have him here. So as head of the CS Best Practice, Rob is responsible for leading initiatives that up-level, scale, and standardize the way CSMs deliver improved realization, adoption, and partnership for their customers. He's passionate about customer success and ways to delight Adobe customers so they maximize value from their investment with Adobe. You obviously have a professional bio writer. So look, without further ado, Rob, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the very warm welcome, Peter. So as Peter said, my name is Rob Redman. I am the Customer Success Best Practice Lead at Adobe, and I'm here to talk to you today about an approach we used to help build capability and skills within our customer success team. So this picture depicts a very well-known corporate dilemma when it comes to investing in arguably the most important asset to any organization, and that's our people. What if we train them and they leave? What if we don't and they stay? So to address this dilemma, organizations now have to work much smarter in the way that they train their employees to be more relevant, to be more engaging, to be more future fit, and to be a cut above their competition so that their employees don't want to leave. Very few people now just go to work just for the pay packet, so the way that an organization invests and looks after their people can directly impact the way that they hire and recruit the best talent in the marketplace. So how do we hire how do we provide the most relevant training content for our teams? And what is the right approach to identifying the skills that are missing within your customer success teams? And most importantly, how do you measure the impact of that training back to the business? So these are just some questions I plan to tackle today in the approach that we use to close that skills gap by using a skills assessment. So to demonstrate the importance of investing in our people, I'm going to turn to this PWC CEO report that asked about 1,300 chief execs the big questions that's keeping them up at night. And a big theme that came from that report was that CEOs or global CEOs are finding it much harder now to bridge the gap in their people capabilities and recognize the need to be reskilling and retraining. And so what is the impact if we don't invest in our people? Well, in that same report, these CEOs shared the impact on their business of these gaps in their people capabilities. So if we start thinking about the business impact, lack of innovation is at the top of the list. The inability to pursue market opportunities, missing growth targets. And then when we think about our role and the importance of customer centricity, the impact on poor quality standards within that customer experience is really impacted. So this is kind of useful research. If you're struggling to get the attention within your organization developing people, then this is very useful. So let's now turn our attention to how do we identify the skill gaps within our own organization. So we could start by looking at the industry kind of view of what are the key skills within customer success. But it's not easy, right? I'm sure you all agree that the profile of a customer success manager now, say versus 5 years ago, is changed. The critical skills that are now needed in our role is very much different to what it was. So for example, LinkedIn, any guesses for what you believe is the fastest skill endorsed by fastest growing skill endorsed by CSMs over the past 3 years? Any guesses? Stakeholder management. Good guess, Kate. Resilience, good. Anyone else? Any other guesses? No? Okay. So this is the only bit of fancy animation that I have in my slide today, just to warn you. And don't ask me how I did it. So if you can't quite see, the answer is data analysis. So it's now the 7th most popular skill, gone from, I think, rank 27 of the skill that endorsed by CSMs, which comes as no surprise when you think about the mountains of customer data that is now available to organizations. The ability to interpret that data, to tell a story, to provide informed recommendations is so critical now to the CSM. So whilst it's good to look at industry trends, it's not going to give you a good picture of the skill gaps within your own organization. And for this, I turned to another report, LinkedIn's Workforce Learning Report, that revealed that the #1 approach by learning developers to close the gap on skills was to run a skills gap assessment. And that's exactly what we did at Adobe. So what are the benefits of a skills assessment? Firstly, develop more targeted, relevant content. The moment that you get the results of your skills assessment, it immediately shines a light on where the gaps are in your team. And that allows you to then prioritize and look at the commercial impact of that skill gap. If you're lucky to have learning and development funding, then it allows you to save money because you're using that budget much more smartly. Secondly, to drive continuous improvement. This is all about the performance, making sure that you're doing all you can to drive the right performance in your teams. And so it's really arming your managers to make sure they can coach their teams to drive better performance. It also can highlight where there are perhaps gaps in usual processes and procedures that the team are calling out they need help on. So this idea of continuous improvement. And it's not just about identifying the gaps. What you'll see later is it has the advantage of identifying your top talent, the diamonds in the rough, the people that in the assessment are calling themselves out as experts in certain fields or practices. And then lastly, sorry about the rendering, but to set yourself up for future success, what are the critical few skills that we're going to need to make sure our CSMs are truly future fit? And that directly informs your criteria for how you hire in the right talent. So I spent a lot of time when positioning the importance of the skills assessment using this type of benefit to our leadership and all the way through to the top. Like, what's in it for the team? What's in it for Adobe? With a particular attention around this idea of a growth mindset culture. We wanted people to come in taking this assessment, being very honest and open. It wasn't a witch hunt. It wasn't a scorecard. Instead, an opportunity for CSMs to call out where they need help. So we hosted the survey on just a simple survey, so using Slido or Typeform, whatever you have access to, and we designed the questions around the role of the customer success manager. We made sure that we captured both qualitative and quantitative insight. You'll see how useful that is later. And the key thing here is we asked CSMs to complete the assessment, but we asked their manager to complete the assessment on behalf of their CSM to give that different perspective. Our assessment took around 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and we set the expectation that it would be delivered twice a year, just to start benchmarking the results. So our assessment was made up of kind of 4 parts. First of all, the core competencies. So a couple of years ago, I was involved in rolling out our global CSM competency framework, which was defining what we believe are the core kind of characteristics and skills that make up a CSM. So these are including things like relationship management, interpersonal awareness, account planning, relationship management, those typical things. So we designed questions around those competencies, again, asking CSMs to fill in that assessment as well as their manager on their behalf. Engagement and processes. So every stage of the customer lifecycle, we were asking the CSMs how competent they felt about engaging and delivering that engagement to that customer or carrying out an internal procedure. So it could be running a kickoff session for a customer or delivering an impactful strategic business review or you're managing a renewal. Tools for success was all around just driving good efficiencies and productivities. So what are the daily tools that CSMs are using, as I said, to be more productive? So as basic as office tools like Excel and PowerPoint to collaboration tools like Teams or Slack, and then any other internal tools that you might have at your disposal as well. And then lastly, we asked CSMs how competent they felt articulating the features and benefits of our solutions. So I'm all sure you're familiar with Adobe, but Adobe Analytics, we have our creative suite tools, XD, Adobe Sign. So we went through those different solutions. So the following few slides that I present just show some of the insight that we gleaned from the assessment, but it's part of a much bigger presentation. And that's one thing that as a key learning is to make sure you present that back to your leadership, to your management, and to your team. They want to make sure that their voices were heard, and they want to be part of the process. What you'll see later, they want to buy into the improvement plan. So I took the time to do that. Just this example slide here is showing you the response rate of all of the respondents across the different teams. So you can see we had a good response rate, and as I said, it doesn't include the managers that completed the assessment on behalf of these individuals as well. Always good to do an executive summary, so we rolled up the average scores for each one of those categories, including the recommendations. And so what that gives me is a soft target that I can now work to when we repeat the assessment next time to see how we can improve, how we can move the needle. So this is an example visualization of how we represented the CSM competency framework results. So bear with me, let me just explain this pretty busy slide. So on the ring of the kind of the spider diagram, so to speak, are each of our different competencies. As I mentioned, relationship management, account planning, interpersonal awareness. And the further you go into the spider web, the scores go from high to low. So the further you go in, the lesser the score. The blue line represents the average scores that we got for our CSMs, and the dotted red line represents the score that the manager submitted on behalf of their CSM. Okay, hopefully making sense. And so I'm sure your eyes are drawing immediately to where you're seeing a couple of gaps. So immediately on that point one, we saw that there was a bit of a gap around what we call our value selling methodology. This is a standard methodology we use within Adobe that's almost like teaching our sales teams and CSMs to sell, how to skillfully negotiate, how to get access to power, how to navigate and lead that renewal discussion. So immediately that helped us to start thinking about, right, what do we need to do to improve that? How do we redesign that so it's more suitable for CSMs? The second one is, I think is just as important, is we saw a gap in self-enablement. So again, that allowed us to probe a little bit more around, are we doing enough to support our teams? Are they being disciplined enough to find the time to facilitate their own personal development? And if they are we giving them the right resources and guidance to facilitate that development? So again, a couple of examples from the insight that you can glean here. Another example of the scores, the average scores we rolled up for tools for success. So I mentioned earlier about the growth of that fastest skill endorsed for around data analysis. So immediately, the need to brush up on your Microsoft Excel skills was something that we clearly need to improve upon. We have other internal tools, a tool such as the value maps, which allows us to map the business benefits to our capabilities. So immediately, some key tools that we knew immediately we needed to drive improvement upon. So this slide demonstrates the importance of capturing that qualitative insight. So a simple but effective word cloud is summarizing all of the key themes that we're seeing from the responses of, in this case, the question, what do you need to improve your expertise with delivering a strategic business review? I'm sure all of you in this room can relate to some of these themes and these requirements, right? The ability to get better access to more senior stakeholders. I need help with improving my discovery techniques. I want access to more gold standard templates. When we asked the CSMs about the modality of the training, then we heard them loud and clear. We needed to provide a much more blended approach to our training. Stop training us by movies. Give us access to the tools so we can start using it ourselves. Give me access to the specialists. Let me shadow them to learn. So again, some really key themes here that allowed us to act upon. And then lastly, just a view of our recommendations. Right, what are we doing to act on this information? And this was something that I didn't do alone. I think it's really important that you bring in and you almost empower the team to support you. Let them feel part of the improvement plan. And make sure that you over-communicate the progress that you're making. So how have we acted on this insight? What have we done since the results? Here's just 3 example initiatives that are currently in flight now of how we're driving that improvement. Number 1, the manager coaching dashboard. Number 2, something we call the SME.net. And thirdly, a pilot that we ran called Tools Tuesday. So let me start with the manager coaching dashboard. So my first priority off the back of the results was I got to get this into the hands of the managers so they can start reviewing the results, processing it, and start looking at that both at an individual level, but also at a team level. So using my 5 out of 10 Excel skills, I built this coaching dashboard that ingested all of the skills assessment data into this Excel platform so that the managers could start filtering it by the team and by their individual. What you'll notice in the top right is I also brought in performance data of the CSM as well. So giving that kind of how they're performing from a KPI, retention point of view, so that you've almost giving that manager a bit of a 360 view. And so why are we doing this? Well, what it's allowed us to do is I guess, arm the managers to start having that coaching conversation, right? To have that honest discussion around where they're performing well, where they need help. In particular, when you look at the bottom right, as I mentioned earlier, this kind of perceived view versus the reality was so powerful. In some cases, CSMs are probably undervaluing themselves, but in other cases, a bit of a level set that you're not a 5 out of 5 for everything, right? So I think it's really helping to arm that. And so, again, the results of that was feeding directly into their individual development plans. I know for a fact it's being used still in their one-to-ones and our quarterly reviews as well. The second initiative was what we called our Customer Success SME.net, Subject Matter Expert Community. So as I mentioned, the skills assessment wasn't just good to identify where there's capability gaps, but it's really good to call out where CSMs are saying that they're experts in a given solution or given practice or given engagement. I think in Adobe, I've observed that over the years, it's harder for a CSM to feel this sense of ownership and expertise. And so, I think we're often seen as like the value enablers. We bring in the technical expert to do something here. So this was our opportunity to give CSMs an opportunity to have a voice, to showcase their expertise. And so what we're in the process of doing now is creating these virtual teams of experts by solution, by practice, and allowing them to proactively help the team, be the go-to for certain questions or connect them to a broader ecosystem. And lastly, an initiative that we called Tools Tuesday. Say that after a few drinks. And so similar to the SME.net community, we were able to identify CSMs to lead very short, 30-minute punchy training sessions every Tuesday on the tools that we scored relatively low. So looking at tips and tricks for using Excel or how to deliver an effective PowerPoint presentation. And what was nice about this initiative is the pressure to deliver the training wasn't on me. It was actually nice that I was able to embrace the fantastic diversity that we had in our team and let them lead on these sessions, and they enjoyed it. There wasn't much pushback at all. So they're just 3 examples. I guess maybe some of you are sitting there thinking, well, Adobe, you've got all these fantastic resources, and you've got all this, external. I didn't have to seek any budget for those 3 initiatives. Everything was done by myself, and leaning on the diversity, the embracing the team ahead. So hopefully you can resonate to some of these and repeat them in your own organization. So far, the skill assessment has been well received. It's just been rolled out in the Americas and soon to be in APAC and Japan. And there's also discussions about repurposing it for other teams within Adobe, including sales and in consulting. There's a ton of learnings we've got to learn from that first effort. We're going to try and repeat the exercise again in April, May, so we can really start to benchmark the results. And there'll be no doubt we'll find other emerging skills that I'm sure the team will need our support on. So if you're sitting there thinking about wanting to run an assessment yourself, I appreciate I've covered a lot today and I've gone at quite high pace. So you'll find on your a printout that, number one, the questions that I use in the assessment, and then using your phone, you can scan that QR code and you'll have access to the survey as well. If you wanted to take that back, get some feedback from your team, thinking about if that's something you want to do as well. So just in closing, just a few tips if you were thinking about running an assessment for yourself. Number one, start with the why. Think about the right time to run this assessment for you. Think about the objective. What do you want to get from it? And take the time to design the questions that are suitable for your business and think of the end in mind. Think about how you want to act on the insight that would inform the questions that you need. Over-communicate the benefits. Make sure everyone really understands what's in it for them in terms of taking on the assessment. Make sure they're honest and open and have a growth mindset when they're thinking about the assessment. And then finally, don't feel that the improvement plan has to sit firmly on your shoulders. Empower others to be part of the process, be part of the solution. If you've got any questions about my approach, then you're welcome to get in touch or speak to me after. And with that, thank you for your attention and enjoy the rest of your conference. Thanks.
Oh, you're not done yet.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize I had questions. That's good.
A few questions. So, how do you enable the CSMs during onboarding and on the job to give them the opportunity to develop the skills?
So this is in onboarding, would you say in the context of a new employee onboarding or customer onboarding? I'm assuming new hire onboarding.
It's new hire onboarding, I'd say.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, we didn't have anything. Like it was like find a friend and bribe them to give you some support. We have rolled out a formal 6-week onboarding program that we worked with our enablement team on. So we're very fortunate to have that. It needs to be refreshed, but there's no doubt the benefit of having a buddy and having someone localized is definitely very, very useful. And if I bring it back to the skills assessment, maybe there's an opportunity of when they come in, although making sure it's not too intrusive, but to maybe think about part of their onboarding process, a skills assessment, so that they feel they're on the right track and they can ground themselves by saying, okay, it's been 6 months, I'm exactly where I need to be. So we haven't done that, but that could be a use case of how we use the skills assessment. Yeah.
Why do you CSMs use LinkedIn?
Ooh, good question. Yeah, good question. So you probably would have seen it didn't get the highest results. I mean, I think we were lucky to get a corporate license for LinkedIn, and definitely there's a use case for how we can get closer to our customers. I think we all hopefully agree that we need to be well in tune with our key contacts and our sponsors, but I think it's primarily a prospecting tool. So I think it's more used by the sales team. But yeah, there is a couple of good use cases. I think there's like company news and alerts it can give you. So it's that's where we recognize getting close to the skills assessment that there was a bit of a level set we needed with the team to say, look, we recognize you're not sales. Let us define some clearer use cases of how you can use LinkedIn, and hopefully that seems to be working. So.
I think the next one is a fair question. So how would you translate your methodology for a startup organization or a less mature, smaller CS function?
I mean, my view is, and I appreciate that I work more in an enterprise view, but I don't see why you couldn't rinse and repeat that in a startup environment, right? This is about your people that are looking, irrespective of whether you're managing 5 customers or 100 customers, there's still certain traits that they're going to need to maybe manage at scale that's differently to an enterprise. There's going to be perhaps different engagements and procedures that you need. So purely looking at the framework of my approach, I think can be repeated, but absolutely the questions and maybe the engagements that I've included may not be suitable. But I would hope that you'd see this as still applicable to if you're a startup or a small organization.
Okay, I really like this question. The CSMs, is an improvement in the CSM's confidence and performance since introducing subject matter expertise elements rather than being the jack of all trades. Introducing the SME element rather than being a jack. Yeah, it's a good question. It's early days. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I think I'm not going to put him on the spot. We do have one of our SME experts in the room on that table. I am going to put him on the spot. It's Craig. But and Craig, feel free to chime in. But I think immediately there wasn't much resistance in offering out to say, do you want to be seen as the Adobe representative for this given solution? And yes, there's still the jack of all trades. There's still an element of having to balance your skills. But I get the sense that there's a sense of good feeling of I'm going to be an expert in this solution. I'm proud to represent the team. But Craig, what would you say to that?
Well, I guess this originated a couple of years ago where the stack was growing very fast and we had to learn to adapt very, very quickly. And creating SME allowed us to, I guess, cover a large region, EMEA, with a cross representation from the entire EMEA group. And we're looking at probably 6 to 8 people, maybe 10 people, where you're really frequently engaging with the brands, other teams, product teams, etc., to really surface everything that's relevant for CSM. So the CSMs are equipped with everything they need to know to go out to the customers. And it's worked very well. So core teams who are passionate about a particular product, who can then network and triage any kind of customer feedback, then triage back to the SME team, back to the product team. So it's really that function that is the gateway, the conduit between the CSM organization and all the other ecosystem related to a product. So it does work.
Yeah, and just to add, there's no surprise that as these SMEs work with their counterparts, they're going to grow their own knowledge. And the question was about performance. Of course, they're going to feel much more competent around that given solution as well. So that has another advantage. So.
Just one question I have is that if you follow normal corporate
steps in your career. It's always about moving up. Are you seeing that, like a CSM in Adobe, it's not necessarily about being, moving up. It's about experiencing different things, because not everyone can be the leader, right?
Completely, yeah.
So what I've seen with some of these CSM skills matrices is that it's all about getting up to the title, as opposed to sometimes maybe it's the skill, it's the work that you actually do.
Yeah, I agree. Well, my view is that I think you have to find a balance, because we want to embrace that ambition, right? But at the same time, you're right. Like, I think that the assessment has hopefully proved that I think it's a role that we're not, there's your box, stay in it. Like, we're across the entire life cycle. You can get involved at so many different initiatives at different stages of your customer. And even just, some of the examples I shared today just shows how creative you can be in the role with the mindset that's ultimately there to drive a better experience for our customers. So I do think there's more opportunity than other roles, perhaps, to diversify that role. Our CSM competency framework has definitely helped to put some boundaries around the leveling, which has definitely helped. We didn't really have that before, so I felt some people were like, well, I've been here for 5 years, so I naturally need to grow. But then I love the fact you've got other CSMs that just love being a customer success practitioner. They're passionate about that. They're not interested in leveling up any further than just working with their customers. So you get different types of motivations for different CSMs.
Okay, cool. Okay, great.
All right.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Peter.
Elbow.